It's Wednesday, October 4th, 2017. I'm your host, Sarah Beal. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show in store for you today. On today's show, we get an update on the Barnstable Police Department from Deputy Chief Matthew Sonnabend. Then we'll hear from Glenn Cannon of the Cape Cod Commission. He fills us in on the Route 28 corridor study near Cotuit Meadows. And finally, we'll hear from Finance Director Mark Milne. But first, let's get a look at today's top headlines. The Senior Center is now offering a 50-plus job seekers group. Funded and supported by the Massachusetts Councils on Aging, the Job Seekers Networking Group offers support and assistance to people 50-plus that are looking for a new job, new career direction, or an encore career. The group will meet on the first and third Thursdays of the month from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Barnstable Senior Center. For more information, please call 508-862-4750. Diamondback terrapins have hatched at the Marine Environmental Affairs Division. Here is a time-lapse video of the recent hatchlings. According to Natural Resource Officer Sean Cordes, these turtles hatched from nests which were laid directly in the marsh trail at Sandy Neck Beach. Instead of being run over, these nests were safely relocated and monitored until their expected hatch dates. When terrapins hatch out of their eggs, they temporarily retain a small yolk sac on the bottom of their shells. This provides these small turtles with enough energy to make it to the marsh in order to take cover before their first harsh winter. Once this yolk sac dries up, terrapins will begin feeding on their own. At that point, our Head Start turtles will be distributed out to local schools and organizations where they will live and grow all winter long. This provides these turtles with a head start, and they will hopefully grow to the size of a 2 to 3-year-old turtle in the wild in just a short period of time. This extra growth should provide these turtles extra strength and protection against predators and harsh conditions once released back into the wild. The Land Acquisition and Preservation Committee is hosting Fall Walking Weekend this weekend, October 6th through the 9th. There will be 2 walks hosted every day. Each walk will be led by members of the Land Acquisition and Preservation Committee or an able representative of that area. For more information on the Fall Walking Weekend, please go to the town's website and click through to the Land Acquisition and Preservation Committee page. Now let's check in with Barnstable Police Department Deputy Chief Matthew Sonnabend. Deputy Chief, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Always important to have the police department on the show. There's a couple of incidents over the weekend that were kind of interesting we'd like to talk about today. What can you tell me about what happened?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, Sarah. There were a couple things. On Friday, on September 28th, one of our officers, Thomas Edwards, had gotten called down to Sears down by the mall they had a shoplifter that had fled on foot, that had run away. So they were looking for some help trying to locate him. There also happened to be one of our officers was off duty at the time and heard the transmission over the radio. So he was also looking around the area, Kevin Shaw, and they saw the individual who was later identified as Anthony Mares from Tennessee, actually, getting into a truck. So Officer Shaw approached him and identified himself, showed his badge, said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about this." And when Mr. Mares noticed the police were there, put the car in gear and ran the car at Officer Shaw, who had to jump out of the way. The other officers then tried to pull him over, and he took off in the vehicle, headed down towards Main Street, wouldn't stop, and he took a left from Barnstable Road onto Main Street, which right there would be going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Went down the wrong way on Main Street, went up onto the sidewalk, I guess, and trying to get away from the police. So the police stopped the pursuit because it was just getting too dangerous.
Yeah.
And he ended up taking off and getting out of the area. So they called different police agencies to keep an eye out for him because they, checked and the truck was registered out of Truro. So they eventually found the truck parked in the Cape Cod Hospital parking lot and were able to determine that he was picked up from someone and brought back to Truro. They were then able to find that person who said they had dropped him off in a heavily wooded area around Wellfleet, some conservation area. So our canines were sent down that way, and Officer Jeff Jackson and other resources went down there, and the canines were able to find Mr. Mares hiding in some woods under some brush, and were able to arrest him and bring him back. And so that was resolved pretty handily.
All of that for shoplifting?
All of that, well, then he tried, ran his car at the police officer, and then, seriously, I mean, if the individual had just, stopped and talked to the police, he probably wouldn't have gotten into that much trouble,
Things escalate
But yeah,
quickly.
exactly. I don't know what some people are thinking at the time, And then the other incident that you were asking about happened on Saturday evening about 9 p.m. One of our sergeants was in a marked police car, Sergeant Kevin Tynan, and he had pulled somebody over for a traffic violation on South Street and was sitting on the side of the road writing a citation for that individual when another car coming down the street at about 25 or 30 miles an hour rear-ended the police car. And it was determined that individual, after they spoke to him, a Martin Lannon from Centerville, was intoxicated. So they gave him field sobriety on the side of the road, and were able to, had him checked out by rescue, and he was uninjured. The officer was taken down to Cape Cod Hospital for minor injuries, and the individual was arrested for drunk driving and just ran right into the back end of the police car, parked on the side of the road with the emergency lights on.
Oh boy!
So you're right. There's just craziness going on out there these days.
Just a little bit. But the officer that was involved in that accident,
he'll be fine.
He'll
it
be
was
fine.
Just bumps and bruises, really.
Yeah.
He's fine. He's right now he's recuperating a little bit. He should be hopefully back to work this week, and everything will be just fine. And the other thing we got going on is the Citizens Police Academy kicked off, and Lieutenant Mark Cabral and Officer Eric Driftmeyer are running that. And I was there last night talking to him, giving a little presentation. And it's a very, very lively group. Lots of good questions and good community engagement. And we like to see people coming out for that.
That's wonderful. I know that the police academy that you guys put on is one of the most popular things that you guys do. People, you have waiting lists for people that want to get into the class. So I love to hear that you have a very lively group this time around, ready to ask questions and ready to really learn about what it is that you guys do over there.
No, we always do. The groups are always good, and it's a good interaction with people. It really is.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today, and letting us know about a couple of incidents that happened over the weekend, and hopefully that'll be it for a little while. You guys keep it calm and safe, and no more car accidents and people driving away from you, and
kind of calm down for a little while. Enjoy the fall.
Yes, that'd be nice.
All right, have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. My guest today is Deputy Chief Matthew Sonnabend. Coming up, we'll hear from Finance Director Mark Milne, but first we get an update from Cape Cod Commission Technical Services Director Glenn Cannon. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us today. The last time we were here, we were talking about the Route 28 corridor study near Cotuit Meadows. What can you tell me about how that went?
Sure. So last Wednesday we had another public outreach to kind of bring back the information that we had found out for them. If you remember the last time, a lot of residents from Cotuit Meadows had come to the meeting, told that they were promised a traffic signal at the end of Noisy Hole Road, which is the access to their subdivision, and they wanted to see that traffic signal installed. We did a little bit of investigation into it. I would say, unfortunately, the permit had already been issued for that, so we couldn't really even find who the responsible party was at this point. With that said, it seemed like it was a little bit too late for them. We did a further investigation. We did something called a traffic signal warrant investigation, and that's where you go out and do a traffic count of the intersection. It has to have a certain number of volume there or accidents to rate a traffic signal. That intersection did not rate on the traffic signal warrants. Fortunately, they don't have enough crashes, so that's a good thing. It's still safe.
A good thing.
But there also just isn't enough traffic coming in and out of one subdivision to warrant a traffic signal. So, so not great news for them. There's quite a few things on the road we think we can do, but they're not going to get a traffic signal right there at their location.
What are some of those things that you're thinking about doing?
Sure, and always with these things, we look at like short term and then a long term thing. So in the short term, we were going to ask MassDOT to do a speed study out there, virtually right in front of their Noisy Hole. It's 50 miles per hour.
Yeah, that's
so it's
pretty fast.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
Yep.
So we want to go out and do a speed study, see if we can lower that speed limit right there. Also, believe it or not, within that 50-mile-per-hour zone, there's a crosswalk. And you can barely even tell it's there. It's all worn out, as you can imagine, all the cars driving up and down. We want to enhance that crosswalk a little bit. They have these rapid flashing beacons now they put at the crosswalk. So you press the buttons, it has almost like a flashing strobe light. Very, very good at grabbing attention, though, for drivers, so hopefully that crosswalk will be enhanced. We also think with the transit, there is a transit stop there near Botello's Hardware. You know, the bus does pull over. We might be able to give them a shelter there, so at least people will be covered if it's raining, and have, you know, have a little bit of shelter from the weather. So those are some of the short things we want to look at. In the long term, we did do other traffic signal warrant analysis. One at Bowden Road, that's right at Botello's. That did meet a traffic signal warrant analysis. So we're going to bring that forward to MassDOT, see if we can move that forward so that, you know, that doesn't really, you know, it doesn't immediately impact the Katuitt Meadows folks, but sometimes if you get a traffic signal close enough, you know, when it stops traffic, it'll provide gaps, so it makes it a little bit easier for you to pull out. You know, it's not as, again, it's not as good as being right at your entrance way, but it could help out a little bit. We had a request for a bike path on Route 28 connecting Orchard Road in Mashpee up to Route 130.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
It does.
If you're driving down Route 130 in Mashpee, they actually have a bike path that ends right at the Barnstable town line. So we'd like to continue that down into Barnstable, bring it onto Route 28. And again, if we could bring it over to Orchard Road, I do know many cyclists, if they're coming from Falmouth, they get off of Route 28 right after the rodeo, a little side street, Quiniquisette Road, and they like to ride down the back way. So you know, if we can get them off of Route 28, I think that's great. If we made that connection from Route 130 over to this Orchard Road, again, so they can, you know, they can travel a little bit down Route 28, but then get off of Route 28, make it a little bit safer. We think that's a good idea. We also think that Route 28 could use some help in this area. Believe it or not, there are pedestrians here. There's a nice little commercial area there with pedestrian activity, and I think it would be better if it could be enhanced. You know, sidewalks probably on both sides of the road. Many times we do bike lanes too on a major roadway like Route 28. It isn't for everybody, but certainly on Cape Cod, we have the hardcore bicyclists, the people who want to be in the road. So you know, if we could provide them with a bike lane, I think that'd be a good thing. We'd also like to see maybe turn pockets on Route 28, and these can be good and bad. So as you are going into either Bowden Road or even Noisy Hole Road, you'd have like a left turn storage lane there.
Oh, okay.
So the cars would still be able to drive by you as you're waiting to take your left turn. It makes it a little bit better for the people taking a left turn. And believe it or not, though, it actually makes it a little bit harder to get out of the side street. Because as these left turners are out of the traffic stream now, people are driving past them a little bit faster. So again, good and bad. We heard that both from the public. Some people were in support of them, and some people did not want to see that. We also think, along with an enhanced transit stop, maybe if we could get a bus pullout. While we were doing our traffic counts, you know, you do observations also. So the bus stops right on the pavement of Route 28. As the bus is stopped waiting to pick up passengers, because it has no shoulder, there's no place for it to get off the road. You know, trucks are passing the bus as it stopped in the 50-mile-per-hour zone, you know, with cars coming straight on at 50 miles per hour. So, you know, we see that very hazardous. Thankfully, no crashes. You know, we haven't seen it, but, you know.
You don't want to wait for something to happen.
How long do you want to wait for take the chance? So we think that's something else that could be happening. Again, these are more long-term. Something, you know, we're going to finalize the report. So it's still people have a chance to get their comments in. We're just wrapping it up this week, as a matter of fact. But we'll finalize that report, pass it on to MassDOT, and we'll see what can be done with those long-term, you know, both short-term and long-term improvements. So there will be help coming to the people of Katuitt Meadows. It isn't probably the traffic signal they may have wanted to see.
But it'll be something.
But it'll be something, and hopefully it'll make it a little bit safer and a little bit easier for pulling it out of there.
That's wonderful. I mean, it's not what they wanted, but there's definitely some things that you can do to help alleviate the situation down there, which is, I think that's important. And so I think they probably also appreciated being heard.
I think so too. You know, if nothing else, we gave them an answer. You know, I think it was one of the things. People came to the meeting. You know, they had been promised a traffic signal, but they didn't really know who to ask. You know, and it was still out there that they were still going to get one. I don't see how it's going to happen, quite honestly. You know, I don't know where the developer is now. Again, the permit's already been issued. Once the permit has been issued, it's very difficult to get somebody to go back and redo it. And even with that said, again, we followed it up to the next step. We went and did the traffic signal analysis that MassDOT would tell the developer he has to do anyways. It came back negative. So I don't really see too much point in going after anyone.
All right, another thing we wanted to talk about is the safe routes to school.
Sure. We're working with MassDOT again on a Safe Routes to School program. It's a nice program where we have a Safe Routes to School coordinator for Cape Cod. She goes out and she talks to all the schools about walking to school and developing programs to help kids walk to school. We get involved with it because we see a lot of infrastructure problems or a lot of infrastructure deficiencies out there for everyone, and you know, and just for school children also. I also see you see it more and more these days with the tighter school budgets. More and more towns are requiring children to walk to school. So if we're going to require them to walk to school, you know, we need to provide them with the facilities to make it safe for them. So, so as they walk to school, they really try to identify the neighborhoods where the children are living, and then the school system itself. See if makes we have adequate sidewalks, adequate crosswalks. You know, if a traffic signal has a push button, pedestrian button on it, right, very important if it does, and many of them don't.
Right.
And many times they're not working too. So we need to do all those investigations with her. Where we just had to sit down yesterday with the town of Barnstable just to get that process moving. Even for the West Barnstable School on Route 6A in Barnstable, the Safe Routes to School coordinator wasn't too sure what could be done out there. And I told him, well, at least we can maintain the sidewalk that we have. It isn't much, but we could sweep it off and make it more presentable. The crosswalk could probably use a little bit of help. So there's a lot of little things you can do to make it better too. It doesn't always have to be a large project that costs thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars sometimes. So
sometimes it's just a little bit of maintenance.
Correct, and then a lot of educating on their end, which I think is a good thing. They talk to the children about being safe. They already have programs in place where teachers will go out, or even the school bus drivers will go out and watch for people who are having a hard time, and to see if there's something we can do about that. I think another one that comes to mind really immediately is the intermediate school off of Route 28.
Oh yeah, a lot of kids walk to that school.
Exactly, and it's very difficult. It's difficult to cross Route 28. There is a multi-use path on one side of the road. There's nothing on the other side of Route 28.
Yeah.
I know they want the children to cross the street to get over to the multi-use path, but sometimes that's difficult.
Yep.
So we want to look at that. We also heard that the multi-use path crosses a number of roads that can be very difficult to pull out of. Is it Lincoln Road?
Lincoln, yep.
I know it's very difficult. Pitcher's Way, again, very difficult roadways. So we want to probably take a closer look at all those and make sure that they're being safe and they can cross safely.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like a great program, and I definitely think it's something that I think that is important, because like you said, BIS, it's a huge walking school. I live right near there, so when I'm going home or I'm going to work, I see kids walking to school and home from school all the time, and sometimes I'm like, oh, it's a little, once they get off that multi-use path, it's a little tricky, so I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it's a good program also. Certainly in transportation, you always look short-term and then long-term.
Yep.
I think it's probably more of a short-term program, so I think that's good because it's more of an immediate effect, as opposed to telling somebody you have to wait for a traffic signal, which does take years.
Yeah.
And thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars to develop.
Yeah.
So very difficult. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Glenn, for coming in and giving us an update. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah.
My guest today is Glenn Cannon. He's the Technical Services Director for Cape Cod Commission. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today. I know last week at Town Council, you gave a presentation about the financial, how the town looks financially to the Town Council and the school committee. What can you tell me about this?
Yeah, sure. Annually, we're required under the charter to have a joint meeting with the Town Council and the school committee to review the financial condition of the town. So we usually have done that in the month of January in the past, but we felt moving it up earlier in the beginning of the budget process would be more beneficial to the budget development process this year. So we had it earlier and conducted it last week. And so we looked at the financial condition of the town and some of the projections going out for some of the history, and then some of the projections for next year on a preliminary basis. So starting with the fiscal year end that just closed, we had a very good year when it comes to our actual budget. Actual revenues exceeding our budget estimates by just over $3 million, and we had over about $3 million of unspent appropriations as well. So we generated a healthy, positive budget variance for the fiscal year that just ended. So it was a good year. Revenues continue to remain strong. This is like the second year in a row that we've seen many revenues in various categories at as strong, some of the strongest levels we've seen in the history of the town. But we're moving forward cautiously because I think we've seen. I think in some of these categories we've peaked, and we saw a little bit of that evidence last year in motor vehicle excise tax, where we actually collected less than we did the year before.
Mm-hmm.
So we are monitoring the financial health of the town on a regular basis. Again, fiscal year 17 was strong. Fiscal year 18, we just implemented and we're working on now. And for next fiscal year, we're looking at some moderate revenue growth that is a little less than what we saw the year before. Again, for situations like the motor vehicle excise tax, we're not going to experience the growth, but we're going to stay at the same level, slightly less than where we were this year. So we presented all of that to the town council and school committee last week, and moving forward, we're optimistic that the financial condition of the town will remain strong. However, we need to be diligent in managing that financial condition. So we don't want to create the impression that we have a lot more money to spend, because we don't necessarily. What this is telling us is that what we do have, we're managing well.
That's great. It's so important, and I know it's important for the town council and the school committee moving forward to have an idea of how things are looking. Is there any concern that because you did it early, things could change in the next couple of months, or are you expecting everything to stay steady?
We're actually moving forward with a continuation of what is known as the 60-40 revenue sharing agreement for next year's budget, whereby all new revenue growth in the general fund is divided between the municipal operations and school operations on a 40 to 60 revenue sharing basis, respectively. We don't anticipate changing that. We wanted to present that scenario to the joint meeting last week, and there were no questions raised about the possibility of changing that, and we don't see a need to change that at this point. And on the capital program side of things, we do have a lot of capital needs. And if anything came out of that meeting last week, I think both bodies recognize that there are significant capital needs. And going forward, I think we're going to try to grow resources in that area of the budget.
Yeah, and capital improvement projects are always, it's something that we do them every year, and they are looked at and reviewed. So definitely something that will be affected. And like you said, the excise tax, it's about the same. It's not like everyone in the town's going to go out and buy brand new cars in the next 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
So.
We've seen that happen. I mean, with the recovery of the economy, starting like in fiscal year 12, we started to see that happen. People were going out,
yeah,
and they all started to buy new cars. And we saw our revenue in that particular area grow by almost $2 million.
Wow.
Over the past 5-year period. But I don't think, and I said this last year, I didn't think that it was going to be sustainable, that kind of growth was going to continue. However, we were going to level off, and we did. We actually fell slightly. We dropped about $100,000 between fiscal year 16 and 17. Mm-hmm. So I think we've reached that point where there's only so many new cars that people will buy, and the cars are lasting longer now. People are taking longer loans out. Yep. And so they're going to hang on to these vehicles for a few years, and we're not going to see that growth. But I think it will remain strong.
Yeah. Were there any questions that town councilors asked at the meeting last week that you had maybe thought about or had something that you're thinking about in the future?
We did have a discussion about a comprehensive maintenance dredging program, mm-hmm. And we are looking at various funding alternatives to address that need.
Yep.
That actually came right after the financial overview presentation, that the discussion on the maintenance dredging program, and so we're exploring many different areas as to how we can come up with additional funds to help pay for that program. We're estimating it's going to cost about $1.5 million annually to create a funding source to keep a viable funding source to implement that program in a comprehensive way.
Yeah, and dredging is very important, especially in the town of Barnstable. We have water on both sides. We have harbors on both sides that are very busy. It's important to keep those waterways open.
Yes, and that adds one new project
Yep.
to our capital improvement program that wasn't in there last year.
Mm-hmm.
So we continue to add more projects to that capital plan, but they're all needed. They're all important projects
Yes.
for our community, especially being a seaside community.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for giving us an update on your presentations from Town Council last week. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
My guest today is Mark Milne. He's the Director of Finance here in the town of Barnstable. Now let's get a look at this week's community calendar. The Osterville Village Library is hosting a fall festival on Saturday, October 7th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. The events happening at the fall festival are a dog parade at 10 a.m., cupcake decorating where you can decorate cupcakes to look like dogs at 10:30. 12 to 2 there will be children's activities including create a costume, arts and crafts, read with a pirate, and more. For more information you can visit www.ostervillefreelibrary.org. School committee meets tonight at 7 in the Town Hall hearing room, and Town Council meets tomorrow night, also at 7 p.m. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow with another great show for you. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Beal.